Hey guys, welcome to FBG. Today we're gonna take a look at something that piqued my interest since the first time I looked into Warhammer 40k. Humanity itself, as well as the Emperor of Man. This made a very big difference for me because until then, humanity basically in every sci-fi universe was pretty blunt, pretty usual, not that interesting. But this all changed when I was introduced to the Empire of Man. So today, let's get enlightened by the Emperor of Man, Rise of Humanity. And here we go.
There once was a man born in a forgotten time,
Oh yeah.
created by a force of unknown origin.
Hell
He would cross the ages knowing his one purpose: to lead humanity as the greatest empire in the galaxy, the Imperium of Man. In this time, he would be known by only one name: the Emperor of Mankind.
Hell yeah. Looks badass. Kind of Paladin Caesar. Big. I don't know. His armor is so badass. Show it to me.
This is Lutin. I must first apologise for the length of time since the last project. The simplest explanation is it took me a long time to compile amid many other things going on for me. So we now move on from the Eldar history and wade into one of the most important and complicated narratives in the universe of the 41st millennium. It is, of course, the rise of humanity and the Imperium. In the dark, never-ceasing war that is the future, humans have risen to control and maintain a galaxy-spanning empire whose official title is the Imperium of Mankind.
Yes.
The Imperium is the largest and most powerful political entity in the galaxy. It has been established for a period of some 10,000 years up to its present date in the age of Warhammer 40k. The lore and scripture around this period is massive. Despite this daunting task though, I've decided to interpret it in one piece chronologically, splitting it into chapters so as to best enable you guys to get an understanding and a grasp of what it is all about.
Oh, that's amazing.
This is the third video in my Warhammer 40,000 lore series, and it seeks to create a foundation for all of the further videos which talk about the Imperium of Man.
I really liked it. Also, I think his efforts for the community are very well recognized because this video is basically recommended a ton. So I think he really does a great job, especially, explaining it to new people and also people that know a bit, but not everything. I think he's doing a very great and accurate job. From everything I heard, he's one of the top dogs out there. So pretty pleased, and let's see what he has to offer. Overview. Perfect.
The Imperium of Man consists of the planets, systems and forces throughout the galaxy which contain Imperial citizens and their derivatives. Not all humans are universally members of the Imperium though, and as you would expect, there are rogue traders and those who choose to live on the legal fringes of the society. The single most important figure within the Imperium is the aforementioned founder, saviour and ruler of this empire, known as the Emperor of Mankind. He formed the Imperium some 10,000 years previous to the current established date in the universe of Warhammer 40,000 at the end of the 30th millennium. This occurred following an especially brutal period of societal disintegration during the last days of the Age of Strife. In this video, I'll outline the political state that is the Imperium, as well as the history behind how humanity reached this point in the far future. As with anything though, the complexity and depth of the lore means I can't cover it in its fleshed entirety, so some tangents are going to have to remain for future videos, but I do my best to cover as much as possible which is relevant.
Thank you.
The Emperor of Man sits as an extremely powerful figure within the Imperium. Make no mistake, he is the centre of humanity in the 41st millennium. So powerful a humanoid, he was arguably barely human to begin with, and he continues to protect mankind after his mortal wounding during the final battles of a period known as the Horus Heresy.
That's so insane.
Were it not for his ever-present psychic voice reaching out, searching, protecting and planning, then the Imperium of Man would undoubtedly fall back into dark oblivion, and perhaps the light would be extinguished permanently.
Eternal ruler.
The Emperor was injured so badly after the heresy that he now exists only as a husk of a man within a stasis chamber called the Golden Throne. This allows him to live on eternally as he has done for some past 10,000 years, whilst continually guiding mankind through psychic whispers. The only catch with this is thousands of psykers are sacrificed every day using their essence and psychic power to keep him alive, as he is heavily protected and attended.
No, I haven't seen this art. This art seems a lot more, from the realistic side of things. Usually see one where he's depicted basically as this god, this super figure. Here he looks just like a very wounded and defeated man, a rotting corpse basically. And it looks a lot more realistic and harsh than you see in most of the depictions. So I think that's a very interesting look on him. It takes a little bit away from the godhood and everything like that, and just shows a little bit more of the man that is in the machine basically there. So yeah, that's kind of interesting, and also very rough to see him this way, basically bound there, forced to eternal living. That's kind of rough, dude.
Back on the ancient homeworld of legend, Terra, or Old Earth. The Imperium of Man in the wider galaxy now consists of many systems, planets, and trillions of citizens. All the while, the Imperial military and the many administrators of mankind, all of whom swear allegiance to the Emperor, all stand together against the nightmares of the galaxy to form what is humanity in the darkest of futures.
It's so interesting.
Now we know that in this future we have access to highly advanced technology and face many voracious enemies wielding our own forces to then counter them. The important question in understanding the Imperium is, how did we get to this time? And to understand this, we need to look back at the extensive and dark history of humanity.
Oh, that's interesting.
There is a small clue as to the way in which the people that constitute humanity in the 41st millennium view their past. That is, the Imperial two-headed eagle, the crest of the Imperium. It stands with its two heads, but with one eye closed. Blind, or perhaps refusing to see the past.
Never realized
the other
that.
eye is open, looking to the future. The logic being that the past of humanity is too painful or dangerous to look back on, so we look forward, striving to be stronger and more powerful, as we have done for thousands of years. There are distinct ages of humanity's history, and these tell the story of how we reached the time of the Imperium. 1 millennium equals 1,000 years. The Imperium has now been established for 10 millennia or 10,000 years. Humanity has existed for roughly 41,000 years. This timeline demonstrates the ages of man through this period, from our ancient history through to the age of the Imperium. We have the ancient history, the age of terror, the golden age of technology or the dark age of technology, the age of strife, the unification wars, the Great Crusade and the fall of the Eldar, the Horus Heresy and the Great Scouring, followed by the final Age of Imperium of Man.
Ancient history. Well, that will be interesting, because I haven't heard anything about that yet, Basically, if you get into the lore videos and everything and watch it 40k for the first time, you don't get a lot of the deep backstory. You get basically, what is it now? So I was always wondering, how did it get to this point? I'm very happy that he touches on this stuff. That's great.
The ancient history tells of the dawn of mankind, but this period is largely one of animalistic evolution. The most significant event occurs around 7000 BC. This event marks the birth of the humanoid, who would become the Emperor of Mankind. His origins are something of a heated debate among the 40k community. There are several theories around this, and it's important to note that something I rarely see stated on forums or discussions around the origins of the Emperor is that quite simply no one knows the origins of the Emperor. It's all just speculation.
Did he just put BC there, as a term, real life term, or is there some reason to call it BC in the 40k as well? That would be interesting to know.
Because one theory has had a vague reference at one time or another does not make it gospel. In fact, as I've repeated before, the crux of the matter with imperial history and lore in general is that very little should ever be considered official or canon. Such is the state of the loss of history, misinformation, and suppression of facts within the 40k universe.
Oh, that's cool.
So essentially, the correct version is the version you want to believe. In a universe where history is stored over thousands of years, and in times of unimaginable devastation and strife, it's unlikely something could be considered a cold, hard fact, especially when you're talking about events that happened in ancient history in an age where accurate recording of information seems unlikely or even impossible to have survived.
That's also cool because it's basically led by religious groups in the church, and they usually, don't really want you to know all the factual evidence of the past. So it's better if they're selling you on their story that there's not that many factual stuff. So I think it's a cool part of the lore that there isn't one factual thing like it was this way and it was always this way and that's the only way you can see it. But rather, the knowledge vanished over time, and it's more like, do you want to believe this or not? What is that you want to believe? That's a pretty cool, just touch on it. It gives it more, realistic terms. However far you can go with the realistic in 40k,
The first version of these events is the often widely accepted background which states that in the ancient times, some humans carried a natural affinity or awareness of the warp. These were the earliest psykers. They would be village shamans or witch doctors in ancient communities. Their premonitions led them to understand that in the future, mankind would face the darkest of times. Their decided course of action would be to commit ritual suicide en masse, returning their souls and essence to the warp to then coalesce and be reborn as one supremely powerful psychic being.
That's
This
drastic.
being would then spend the future millennia living a Highlander-like existence, transitioning from identity to identity, sometimes taking on famous leaders in history to steer humanity in the right direction. And then upon reaching the age of strife, he would step into the fore to become the supreme leader of all humanity and unite us again throughout the galaxy. Now, some people take this as the most canon version of the Emperor's origin, but there are various others, including the one that I actually personally subscribe to. The shaman story is all very well and good, but it leaves me with some questions.
Yeah, that sounds badass, but that basically, sounds like some story religion wants you to believe, very clean, very forward, very, this is it, that was our leader, he was reborn again and again, always, forced our hand from the shadows and stuff like that. He was always there looking over us, all that clean kind of stuff. Usually history isn't that clean, so yeah, that could be very wrong, but I don't know enough to say this.
For example, if these shaman were some of the earliest humans with only a vague awareness of the warp, how could they have such powerful precognition to foresee the need to create such a super being? In addition to that, if they were truly the earliest stowings of psychers for humanity, then surely they would not have been especially powerful, and even with their powers combined, how could they summon humanity's greatest champion? No, not Captain Planet. So those two things stand out for me. Also, their plan to commit mass suicide and then hope that they would all be reborn together seems pretty spurious. It seems to tick the boxes from an okay, I guess that's possible point of view, but it just doesn't make sense beyond that.
Yeah.
Another theory is that the Emperor was in fact one of the Old Ones, who you will remember were one of the most ancient super beings who created the Eldar, the Orcs, and even humanity.
Oh yeah,
yes, really. Go and look it up for those naysayers who think that they did not.
From the Necron story.
This theory, again, at first is captivating, until you start to think about it more. And then you realise it doesn't really make any sense. The Old Ones were, as far as we are informed, not shapeshifters, but creatures of light and dark. There was a statement to the fact that just a single Old One escaped the brutal genocide of their race, but then was eventually killed at the birth of Slaanesh when the Eldar fell. If the Emperor was some other escaped Old One, it doesn't make logical sense that they would choose one race and then ultimately lead it, although I suppose, devil's advocate, who's to say what would be going in the mind of this Old One after his entire race was extinguished? Maybe it had a crisis of conscience. Anything, I guess,
existential
is possible.
crisis.
And then not to mention also the fact that the Emperor would lead humanity to wage war on pretty much every other alien race, which wouldn't really serve any purpose within the context of an Old One's mission statement. They were originally life givers. They seeded planets with life to, create new races in the universe. And again, unless it had simply lost the plot and was operating on his own sort of mission plan. There are some things that do fit this theory though, such as Old Ones being very powerful psychic creatures. They had extended precognition, they had very extensive, almost immortal long life, and they would have the ability to genetically manipulate humans. But all of this seems very soft and is only plausible at best. For me, this theory just doesn't really fit. So the last theory, and the one that I personally believe, is that the Emperor was neither the creation of some bizarre suicide pact or an Old One, rather something in between. It's fair to say that in any ancient history nothing is quite as it's written, and that some reading between the lines is necessary. The most ancient of history available hints that the last remaining Old One floated around the galaxy, meddling and dabbling and trying to have some last impact on the worlds which they felt they had failed and left their race completely annihilated. We know that the Old Ones were capable of creating beings of immense psychic power. This is how the ancient Eldar defeated the Necrons and Satan, who were, let's not forget, gods capable of devouring stars. So the theory I stand by is that a fragmented remaining Old One drifted around the galaxy until he was struck by a precognition so terrible that he had no choice but to resolve becoming involved. It could be that he saw the vision of the Eldar fall or the rise of chaos. Either way, he knew that the Eldar were by now far too arrogant to accept any help and would be of no use, remembering that the Eldar had turned their backs on the Old Ones long ago. The Orcs, who were also an Old One's creation, they were too crass and mindless for such preparation. Instead, he would turn to the weak humans. Weak, but with great potential. And so he would decide on forming a divine creature, a humanoid of the most immense power, but birthed in such a way that he would not allow those humans would not immediately view him as a god, but as a man, to be not worshipped, but instill a sense of power, of awe, of destiny.
That's pretty.
There are other clues as well. Apparently, further along in Earth's ancient history, a creature crashed to Earth who had an appearance we would describe as a dragon. It would seem, though, that this dragon was in fact a small fragment of the star gods, the Satan, who had been destroyed thousands of light years away by the Necrons. Even a tiny fragment of these most powerful beings would be beyond the means of even the most powerful humans to contain. The future Emperor in this time wounded this creature and then apparently took it to Mars. I'm not sure how, but there it lay imprisoned within the planet. The final chapter of that story, that's one for another day. Still though, this helps to secure the idea that no mere reincarnation of a few shaman could produce such or perform such a task. Could an Old One? Perhaps, but given the other evidence I would still discount it. But a perfectly designed humanoid of godlike form created by an Old One who would know a most powerful psychic being was needed to counter not just the future darkness of man, but to face again the Satan and the day of reckoning when the Necrons would rise again. This seems for me the most logical and plausible of origins. The truth though is that we cannot know the origin of the Emperor unless some definitive tome is discovered.
From the three ways he said, I also would say that sounds more plausible than the first two. I don't know if, he also said you can't know if it happened exactly like that. But basically that he's an anomaly or born, created in a way, sent to humanity, and humanity maybe couldn't fully accept that because that would be, Xenos and they're very xenophobic, so that would be kind of heresy, maybe. I'm not fully sure, but that one or something that humanity, couldn't fully subscribe to, couldn't say, yes, that is how it was, because that would be against their beliefs. Kinda maybe something like that behind the curtain, going on. But the religion has to sell their way, because that is how religion goes, how these things go. And if something is that just strict like humanity in 40k, I think it would be the best to kind of conceal it, shove it away, and just say, yeah, that's our emperor. He was created by us. It's completely human, no outside influence, or he was a god from the beginning, not came from a god or was created to infiltrate us basically, but rather either he is a god from the beginning or he was created by humanity into a god. So that makes a lot of sense, but it makes a lot of sense from the religious point of view, but not really from the realistic point of view. Like I said, how far you can go with realism in 40k, but still. That's super interesting, and I think we are just 15 minutes in, and this is so much more interesting than basically every lore you ever see in any sci-fi universe for humans at all. That's just insane how well written this all is.
Discovered, which provides secure evidence as to such, so we are left to speculate until then. One thing that is certain though is that the Emperor was a human and holds godlike psychic power.
Yeah.
He was within humanity throughout all of history, learning, sometimes guiding, mostly sitting in the shadows, until he was needed to take a course of action that would lead us into the Age of the Imperium. The last point worthy of mention is that the Emperor of Man would enforce a strictly secular society. In the early days of the Imperium, this would then enable humanity would identify with him as a man and not as a god. They wouldn't project any religious connotations onto him. Also, because throughout the thousands of years he spent on Earth, he would see the terrible devastation and fragmentation organized religion could cause. He believed that humanity could only achieve its full potential in a strictly secular state.
Oh, no.
However, even in the Crusading period where the Emperor would reunite the lost colonies of man, some people began to spread rumours that he was more than just a powerful man. These beliefs would run so strong it would even question some Astartes to the faith, such as Battle Captain Nathaniel Garrow, one of my favourite characters in the 40k and one of the few Space Marines from the Death Guard chapter not to be corrupted.
Basically the person who wanted to rot out religion and unite humanity created or was the reason for the creation of the biggest religion of all, uniting everyone under a banner he wouldn't ever subscribe to. That is insane. And that is very well written story. That is not just, you pick it out from anywhere and throw it there. It is just very well written and thought through. That's so cool. That's so much better than 99% of stuff out there. That's so good.
By chaos. Some citizens of the Imperium consider the Emperor's stance on faith even a test, so as to distinguish those who can see the whole of the truth, that he is in fact the one true God of mankind. We would now reach the time known as the Age of Terror. This was the period on Earth from the 1st to the 15th millennia, that is the first 15,000 years on old Earth. A period of extreme technological expansion, from a pre-industrial era to that of fusion power and travel beyond our planet and even solar system. Humanity would first colonize new worlds within our system, first on Mars and then the moons of Jupiter, before mankind would start to look at how we could travel beyond. To achieve this next goal, colossal starships were created for humanity to cross the voids between solar systems, and powerful engines at this time. These advanced fusion drives enabled very, very fast but still sublight travel. This meant in order to reach their destination, it could take anything as long as 10 generations of human lifespan to reach their destinations. Subsequently, trade and
crazy.
aid between human colonies was then extremely difficult and would lead to them being established almost as independent states. Very little is known of this period as imperial records are fragmented and limited.
That is
The
insane.
Emperor during this time had no reason to interfere and so would continue his own work and research back on Earth. Study and the improvement of man, all the while remaining in the shadows.
Is it all 40k
During the period between the
art?
1st and 15th millennium, various events of discovery and importance took place that would finally propel us to create our first interstellar confederation in the 15th millennium. One of the most important events of note would be during M4. Humanity would discover the warp and begin to research it.
Oh no.
This is specifically relevant as it would have been one of the discoveries that would lead the Emperor to understanding the necessity of him coming into the fore.
That's not good. Golden Dark Age of technology. Golden and Dark Age at the same time. That's ominous.
As we reach the 15th millennium, humanity would enter a golden age of technology. This would be the highest point in mankind's technological achievements. It would last for some 10,000 years, and humanity continued its rise in technology, science and power, spreading and colonizing mankind all across the Milky Way galaxy.
Pretty big.
We could create our first galactic empire, ruled from Earth, the homeworld, and establish massive trade networks that further powered expansion and advancement. This earlier period in the Age of Technology has a subtitle known as the Stellar Exodus. This marks the time when humanity made its first colonies on other worlds, and also beyond the solar system. These initial colonies were reached using the ships that were still only capable of sublight speeds and were restricted by this, as well as our developing but limited knowledge of building these vast scale ships.
Gate is looking sick.
When these ships reached their destination though, they would be then slowly deconstructed and the materials used to build the colonies. Some would become manufactorums capable of producing massive war machines, or then back then defensive machines, things such as Imperial Knights and even Titans, which the colonies would use to defend themselves against the dangers of the galaxy. In a comparable way to early colonies on Earth, this meant they had to be self-sufficient, and due to the large timescales involved before anyone would likely reach out to them again, they would develop their own cultures and languages.
That could go wrong very quick, because they're basically like on Earth, they're just going out there from their country, basically, going out there and start colonizing and taking land, taking resources, and they have no idea what politics, what stuff is out there, what is going on. That could very easily lead into a war, but that's how humanity is, Not really thinking about it in the first place, just, doing something for themselves, not knowing what is out there. Can get kind of rough, and I could see that this could go south very, very quickly.
Largely influenced by the noble families established on these interstellar voyages, as well as physical elements on the new homeworld. The planet's characteristics would also shape the way in which their societies would evolve. Now, some 6,000 years later, around the period of Millennium 21, mankind now began a process of militarization. It is not known who or for what reason created this process or started it off, but along with our expansion and colonization of planets, we also began to expand and develop our weapons and forces. Fragments of what was developed during this age of technology, such as Imperial Knights, Titans, Land Raider designs, and so on, would later be recovered by the Imperium far into the future.
So badass.
The largest proportion, however, would be lost to the tides of time, and we can only imagine or hope to continue recovering these lost and most powerful of technologies in the 41st millennium.
Really?
Humanity had risen to a period of immense power through our technology. And whilst the
So it could be that right about now there are outposts, still left out technology that humanity can discover, and with that maybe overthrow an enemy they couldn't until then, basically recover. Hey, it's very badass. Or maybe another race found some of their stuff and uses that for themselves. That's cool. Or maybe a very different faction of humans somewhere out there and nobody even knows about them, with an even higher technological standard than the Empire of Man. That would be cool. It could be some cool stories.
The Emperor of Man existed,
Sick.
he had not made himself known to mankind. He continued to bide his time, lying in the shadows, studying, planning, observing.
I wonder what's out there, man.
The very fact that the Emperor is one of the few who would live through this time and on into the Age of the Imperium, and this would then have far-reaching implications for humanity, as the Emperor would carry his knowledge and strength of this golden age into a time when none would recall it, and where it would be of critical importance to our survival.
Was designed
The
to look
Emperor,
like from the
he
movie
would
Alien.
use this knowledge of the age of technology to bring humanity back to a glimmer of what once had been. In the thousands of years where humanity established its first interstellar empire, we would become, as much as the Eldar, supremely dependent on technology. Humankind had risen to a level of godlike understanding, and this was
Mechanicus?
embraced and practiced by the people of the time. The Empire of Mankind was seen as a bastion of technological achievement and began to use a new class of humans entitled the Navigators to expand our reach and use the newly discovered warp to travel beyond the distances of existing star drives and cover vast distances in a short time.
That sounds bad.
A navigator's role is to, as the name suggests,
Disrupted.
protect and guide a ship through the tides and dangers of the warp. Eventually, over time, humanity would find the warp had become too turbulent to traverse. But in this time, navigators, they're not strictly psychers as such. They possess a special gene called, unsurprisingly, the navigator gene. They also possess other abnormal characteristics, including a third eye in the forehead, as well as some more alien appearances such as no pupils in their human eyes and translucent skin, as well as maybe larger than normal appendages. Their origin is believed to have not been a natural development, but to have come about through genetic experimentation and engineering in this period of the age of technology.
That's
It
rough.
was likely that mankind discovered the warp and that it could be utilized for crossings, but that required a safe means to traverse it and looked to create a solution to that problem. Mankind's age of expansion and technological glory across the galaxy would lead to many worlds requiring their own localized defense forces. In this time, humanity's mastery of technology was largely unequaled, and this would be employed in the defense and relative growth of the colonies. One of these defense forces, one of the most powerful of them, would be the Imperial Knights. These were colossal war machines that towered over all they surveyed on a battlefield. They were built with the knowledge of the Golden Age of technology, and these giants survived until the Imperial Age, but they can essentially no longer be constructed from scratch. And as is often the case with technology in the Imperium, it is now merely maintained. The Imperial Knights themselves were operated by nobles from the colony worlds who would be entombed within them. They are sworn to protect their citizens from...
Maybe. That sounds kind of rude, maybe, but they remind me a lot of Bionicles. If anyone still knows them, from my childhood, they're basically super badass Bionicles. And I know that if I was a little younger, I would have bought and collected them so much just for the resemblance alone. It is very cool that they kind of look this way for me personally, because it's a little throwback. I think even now I love them, but there's so cool stuff out there just for the miniatures and stuff like that. Like the Great Unclean One and stuff like that, all the Chaos faction. I still think they look kind of badass, but if I was a little younger, I would love them maybe a lot more than I do now. But still, they're so amazing. They look just
all
super
Xenos threats
badass.
and the endless nightmares in the universe. As the Knights would advance into the later ages, they continued their noble values and morals. Some of the Knights are the most selfless and dedicated forces within the Imperium, as well as being some of the oldest. As with
Man, I really want a Lego and Warhammer 40k collab now, man. That looks so great. I would love to build something like this, just a giant figurine where you have to put it all together. A model, something like that from Lego. That would be great.
most technology from the Dark or Golden Age technology, the Knights are immensely powerful, allowing them to
Lego
run
Technic.
and fight as much as a Dreadnought would fight, but on a much larger scale. These ancient heroes have fought thousands of battles across millennia and stand ready to defend Imperial citizens and support Astartes anywhere in the galaxy.
What are those?
After the Knights we have the Titans, and Titans are the epic war machines of the Imperium. A Knight and the smallest Titan can be anything like 9-10 meters, but the big Titans can be anything up to 50 meters. They are gargantuan death machines. Many people believe that the Mechanicum were originally responsible for creating the Titans. This is not strictly correct. They do construct some Titans, but many they simply maintain. This is because the technology used to create Titans is very, very old, and like many things in the universe of Warhammer 40,000 for the Imperium, a lot of technology is merely maintained because of its complexity. Simpler devices are constructed, but this happens less and less. But the Mechanicum do create some Titans for the Imperium. Originally, the Mechanicus found versions that were completely autonomous, created in the golden age of technology. And the largest Titan so far discovered was upon the lost forge world of Charania. It was a completely autonomous war machine and was dubbed the Castigator class Titan. Its schematic was apparently also contained within a standard template construct on this planet, and it was far superior to any class of Titan utilized by the Adeptus Mechanicus or any other intelligent race in the galaxy.
That's badass.
This was so far the only known discovered Castigator class Titan, but it was subsequently destroyed by Imperial Grey Knights. Grey Knights are the secretive and unbreakable order of Astartes warriors dedicated to the protection of the Imperium from the very darkest foes that humanity faces in the 41st millennium. Now, the portion of the STC database containing the data for the manufacture of the Castigator class Titan was also destroyed by the Mechanicus. It possessed AI, which is strictly outlawed and heretical in the Imperium. Secondly, it had somehow long ago been corrupted by living chaos energy, and for this reason it could obviously no longer be supported. Imperial records of this event, though, note that the cost of life and resources required to destroy this Titan monstrosity was severe. The key point here, though, is that mankind was developing machines in the golden age of technology that would never again be equaled. They could be merely copied, emulated, or used as a template to work from in the future. But our level of knowledge, our rules and guides on what could be created, due in part to events that were yet to come, would very much limit humanity's advancement in the millennia that lay ahead.
Does he have a cock cannon?
I mentioned a moment ago something called an STC. This denotes a device known as a standard template construct. These are one of the single most valuable objects in the galaxy for the Imperium, and their importance was no less during the age of technology.
Wait. Is that? No. That's not from Warhammer 40k. That's from Starcraft. I know that relic. That relic is used to hurt Kerrigan. I know that one. I built this shit in my game. I'm pretty sure. Or there's something like that in Warhammer 40k too, but that thing looks very much like the Starcraft thing. I'm almost, 90% sure it is. Maybe even more. It should be that. I'm very, very sure of that. He took that art, but still. It is what it is.
So what is an STC? STC systems were advanced AI computers created during the golden or dark age of technology, and are said to have contained the sum total of human, scientific and technological knowledge. STCs were created when human interstellar civilization was at its technological peak. Their original purpose was to enable colonists to survive on the new worlds they arrived upon, as they could not carry securely the mass amount of knowledge gained by humanity at this time, and even if they could, they might not have people capable of understanding how to utilize this. The STC solved this problem. It enabled the colonies to access all of humanity's knowledge and display it in a way for them to be able to create anything they needed from the resources available and solve any issue that could arise for them on the new home worlds, no matter the geography, resource limitations or climate. This would enable them to build anything from a simple lasgun to a fortified bunker, massive war machines or an atmospheric processor.
That's cool.
STC systems possess the ability to not just store information but also to produce new designs to meet changing circumstances. They are immensely powerful sources of information and power, and consequently the Imperium places a high value on obtaining these lost relics of ancient knowledge. Even though now, after many thousands of years had passed, most of the discovered STCs are damaged to the point they only contain fragments of their former stored information. But Imperial forces will still use any means or resources necessary to...
I like this lost civilization kind of stuff a lot. It is funny how it reflects, what happened in the real world, basically, with the Romans and then the Dark Ages and stuff going on. I really like how they're developed very highly, very advanced. They went up super crazy, very futuristic, high-level movie kind of stuff. And then it all kind of crashed. They turned back to religion. It turned really, Middle Ages. And it still seems, if you look at 40k, the Empire of Man seems very, very Middle Ages, with knights and everything like that. The religion leading them all. Crusades, everything like that. Just, it is basically the Middle Ages with very advanced technology for that time, it's with mechs and everything going on, guns, blah, 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 blah. But the construct seems very much like it. And I always loved the story of recovering lost civilizations. I think it was done, especially in the last 10 years, in a ton of movies, and often it was, implemented rather meh, very, very bad, I would say. But I like what they did here. Very much, it's out there somewhere, sometimes it gets discovered, but also destroyed. The religious fanatics say, that there can't be AI in it, that it is against our beliefs, and then they destroy the technology and knowledge. Maybe they don't want to get out there, they don't want to infect the Imperium, the pure Imperium. It is very, very strict, very rough. The universe is pretty cold, pretty fanatic. And that is what I think really makes Warhammer 40k special and so different than everything else. Because it is just not more realistic, I don't want to say more realistic, but I think you all know what I mean. It is those religious leaders, and so it's everything turned up to the extreme and carried through. It's not like breaking character or stuff. It is very rough, it is very hard out there. It shows us basically grim future of what could happen if history repeats itself. Kinda, That is my thought process on it, and it's pretty cool.
To obtain an STC once it has been discovered, even if this means the sacrifice of legions of military or civilian Imperial citizens. From the Golden Age of technology and into the ages to come, these valuable systems would be lost or destroyed, so that now in the age of the Imperium they have become beyond rare, almost just a legend. So the consequent discovery of remnants of any new technology from the Dark Age of technology puts an STC's value to humanity beyond estimation. The little knowledge that has been recovered from damaged STC units is then utilised, copied and stored by the tech priests of the Adeptus Mechanicus, who are based deep on the primary forge homeworld of Mars. They believe that STCs are the most holy of artifacts and will seek and protect them at any cost.
Just a quick question, because we are back on Mars. I remember that at the beginning of the story there was something imprisoned in Mars. The giant zombie dragon is imprisoned in Mars. Is there any connection to the Mechanicus? Is there some story going on between them? Are they using its powers? Are they, putting plugs into it and sucking up the powers and using them to power the machines or something like that? Maybe.
This little divergence is an important one because an STC recovery, no matter its state of repair, still remains as one of the most important objectives for Imperial forces in the 41st millennium. The holy grail of this quest, though, although unlikely, would be to recover an intact STC, thereby gifting the Imperium all of the stored knowledge of mankind from the Golden Age of technology. If the Imperium were able to recover an STC of this standard, it would catapult the existing human society into becoming yet again one of the most advanced and significantly, if not the most powerful state in the galaxy. The STC Crusade also explains in part about the state of technology and development of the Imperium, in that much of the knowledge regarding tech is replicated or learned rather than invented and created. Although new tech does come along, it's not overtly specified why so little resources are put into research now. It could be speculated though, however, that
it's also very interesting because all of them are so suppressed and under very strict religious beliefs. They can't, break the rules without being damned heretics and killed or worse, very much worse, It is very interesting that in 40k it is very strong and evident that everything like that is suppressed, and that is most likely the biggest reason why humanity can't progress forward, because they're caught in this very strict, very rough setting and led by religion, by beliefs, and not by the strive for more, for advancement, and making sacrifices for it because they're damned heretics and killed. It all reflects and stuff like that. It is just like I said, repeating history, kinda mirrored from the Dark Ages. It's so interesting, and I think it was never done better than this. Some series or maybe movies attempted something like this, when showing, in ending scenes as it was all, that all played in a age where already there was a civilization around technology and it was all lost, and this is basically what happened. And it usually never plays out this well. This is just overall very interesting and just taking a step further than anything else I've seen so far in this regard.
Mankind relied so strongly upon the Emperor in the last 10 millennia that now they believe only he is capable of directing mankind's
one true leader,
and they solely focus on maintaining him and maintaining the state of imperial affairs. So we return to our story, and at this time in the golden age of technology, humanity continues to expand across the galaxy. Initially slowly, as the gigantic starships we crafted were incapable of using the warp to traverse space. And as we learned previous, they took generations to reach their destination. They were essentially travelling worlds, similar to the Eldar craft world of the 41st millennium. When these ships reached their destination, they would slowly be deconstructed, and their materials could be used to create massive war machines such as the Imperial Knights and Titans, which the colony could use to defend themselves against the dangers of the galaxy.
Smart, actually.
Dangers such as the Eldar and Orcs, who were first discovered in this period as a result of our reaching out beyond our own system to more regularly explore the galaxy. However, interestingly, during this time, humanity was actually considered more powerful than it is in the 41st millennium. This strength was mainly due to our technology rather than actual physical forces, such as Astartes, who did not exist in this age. Science was humanity's primary religion, and the society of man perceived itself as having reached a time where no one could be a real challenge to us. To a degree, this was actually true, so much so that the Xenos races of Eldar and Orc actually signed non-aggression pacts with mankind, which seems bizarre from the Orc point of view.
That's what I was wondering. The Orcs on the non-aggression agreement. How is that possible? That's crazy, dude. Is it because they, if they fought, they were just incinerated by all the crazy weapons and they couldn't even really fight a real battle, so it wasn't even fun for them, or, basically what orcs need, because they would just instantly die without any real fights whatsoever going on.
But there we are.
That's crazy, man.
The discovery and use of interstellar drives, that is, an engine enabling cross-warp travel, now powered humanity's expansion and domination of the galaxy forward. A federated government was formed, enabling us to create a strong trade community and, most importantly, remain unified and powerful throughout our colonies spread across the galaxy. aiding and supporting where necessary with either materials, logistics or military. The exact form and nature of this federation is unknown from this time, as so much knowledge and history was lost. To speculate though, it seems likely that from the way in which humans would live at this time, the Federation would have focused more on discovery, science and working to better humanity, as well as supporting our widespread colonies. As the societies we had seeded across the galaxy grew stronger and more developed, most humans would live long, peaceful lives where menial actions were carried out by automation, leaving people time to indulge in their own lives and dedicate themselves to the glorious expansion of mankind. This golden age of peace bears a stark contrast to the unforgiving brutality of the 41st millennium.
Yeah,
an imperium
extremely
where
so.
many citizens are now born into lives that are shorter, work-driven, and even hellish by comparison.
Yes.
Back with our timeline though, and although navigators had now been discovered and enabled interstellar travel, psychers, that is humans with strong psychic ability, had for the longest time evaded or simply passed undetected. It would be in the age of technology where this new class of human would finally be identified. These psychers seemingly largely avoided the demonic possessions which had occurred for the old ones, Orc and Eldar. It is unclear why this would be, but again you may speculate that the Emperor had a role to play in guiding and shielding humanity through this time. As we know, he had always lain in the shadows, ensuring our safety and creating small influence until he felt it was necessary to come to the fore. Another possibility is that by comparison, the Orcs and Eldar with their more advanced psychic powers simply shone brighter. As we know, the demons of the warp are actually attracted to psychic power in real space like moths to a lamp, and so they appeared amid the depths of the galaxy, a brighter beacon for the chaotic creatures to be attracted towards, whereas the human psychers were very early in development, their powers were less attractive.
That makes a lot of sense, actually.
So much. These psychic mutations were initially limited to only a few individuals per billion or so humans, but toward the end of the age of technology, psychers would appear throughout the colonies more widespread than ever before. And some colonies who were advanced and open-minded, they could see the potential advantages brought by human psychers, and they were protected and allowed to develop and explore their abilities. However, on other, less advanced human colonies, they were often killed and hunted down as the people here feared rather than embraced their divergent powers, much of, similar to witch hunts.
Yeah, exactly.
As I hinted at earlier, one of the reasons during the golden age of technology that humanity was able to not only survive, but stretch itself out to colonize and conquer worlds in the galaxy, not to mention defending itself against aggressive Xenos, would be due to their reliance on AI and the machine creations of the time. However, as nearly all science fiction dictates, these primary sentient machines in the Human Galactic Federation would be known as the Men of Iron, and they would stereotypically turn on their creators and enter us into a cataclysmic war. An STC containing a template for the Men of Iron was discovered by Imperial forces on a chaos-controlled world. It became apparent that much as the Castigator-class Titan, the Men of Iron here had also been corrupted by chaos, and the AI of these creations was sentient. So we can perhaps speculate that the Men of Iron initially resented their human creators, but combined with this were also corrupted, possibly by chaos, which at the time was relatively unknown to mankind, hence the lack of any documentation to support such speculation. It is, however, a possibility and stacks up with what we know of the corruptibility of human AI creations. Also, the intent of the dark forces of chaos to obliterate humanity once it became aware of its existence. Regardless of the reason though, this war was one of the greatest disasters to befall humanity and would rage for centuries. The exact length of the war is not recorded. The conflict was eventually won by humanity, but at a great cost. The damage caused by this conflict to interstellar human society was hugely destructive. We would lose masses of knowledge and technology, not to mention devastating humanity's economic strength and political unity. The war would begin the series of events that would lead into the collapse of the Federation of Humanity at the end of the Age of Technology. As so often is the case, very little information exists from this time, largely due to the Imperium being so wary of a similar disaster happening again. And this is why, amongst the Imperium of mankind, you'll find only the simplest forms of AI. It is viewed as being exceptionally dangerous technology and is strictly outlawed. A substitute is often to combine human and machine into mindless drone-like beings known as servitors. Servitors are the Imperium's cybernetic servants, lacking true self-awareness, and are created from the bodies of either condemned criminals who are unpleasantly lobotomized, or vat-grown humanoids whose bodies and brains are partially replaced with machine systems. As a result of this catastrophic conflict between the men of iron and humanity in the golden age of technology, it is now considered one of the most severe crimes in Imperial society to develop a self-aware, artificially intelligent machine. It is just considered too dangerous to even consider. Around Millennium 23, the warp was taking hold of psychers and wreaking havoc on human colonies.
Not good.
Feudal night worlds were more conservative and less abiding of psychers, as we said previously, who had hunted them down. These would fare better than the others, who had adopted them more open-mindedly at the time. The knights in their semi-titan armour would battle massive warp entities and serve to protect the planet's human population, abiding to their strict code of feudal discipline and ability. Very often, they would be the bastions that protected mankind's worlds, and their importance cannot be underestimated at this time. As is often the case in history, it is not one, but a series of disasters that leads to total ruination.
Yeah, exactly.
And this was no exception for the glorious empire humanity had established during the Dark Age of technology. Whilst it was struggling to recover from a collapse in its unity, as well as destruction of many of its resources and its ability to trade efficiently with other worlds, a new disaster would occur that would see the end of humanity's golden age and instead throw us further into near total annihilation.
Keeps losing, huh?
The race of man would never again reach this golden pinnacle of technological achievement.
That's rough. That's rough. What a great job from Luton here. That is just crazy. I have no idea how he did it, but it was basically like a better version of many documentations, and it's not even real, you know? It's a fantasy universe, and he did it in such a great way. I love it. I'm also very blown away that I'm learning a lot more here than I thought. I thought I would just learn, you know, a little bit about humanity and a lot about the Emperor, but what I really got here was a lot of backstory so far. And that's really what I wished for or needed. I thought I might see that in a later video, but I love the parallels, you know, with the Middle Ages, the Dark Ages, stuff like that going on, losing their technology, getting thrown back, just basically parallels between history repeating itself, basically the real world reality and 40k. It's all so interesting. You can also see the steps that led there, but the decisions they took were basically always the most drastic, most insane, very, you know, human instinct, basic stuff like the AI. They took huge losses on AI and then they prohibited it and even forbid it in their religion. And you can see how it got there, but you have also, you know, seen that this is basically the most drastic way. It is basically as if 40k always takes the most drastic approach of realistically what could happen. And that is a universe that is just more interesting than basically everything else you can see so far. So that was the first part. I'm kind of blown away. I have to, you know, take a little bit of time, think about what I've seen, and talk a little bit more about it later. But that was a lot, and I loved it. I think this video is one of the greatest videos I have seen so far from 40k. I really think Luton did an amazing job here. And that is just, you know, it's crazy. I think 40k is one of the best, if not the best, fantasy universe out there. It's just so well built. It's so interesting. It's more interesting than most, I would say. It just takes a lot of extra steps others wouldn't take, and that is really a great thing. So that is all from me for today. I hope you liked it. If you did, give it a like. And if you have any answers to any of my questions, just put them down in the comments. I'm not the best in answering or, stuff like that, but I usually read pretty much every comment. So I'm aware of a lot of stuff going on, a lot of extra information. Only thing I usually skip if someone wrote spoiler or stuff like that, then I will skip over it until I finish with the series, and then I can read it at a later time. So thank you for watching. I hope you liked it, and I see you in the next one. Bye.